Hello and welcome back. I'm Alana and today you're going to be joining me in a bit of a different setup as I discuss all of the books that I read in the month of June. It's been about a 3-month gap since I posted my last video, and that is mainly because in March I got married. Life has been crazy, which has also transferred into this month. The month of June was insane. I participated in a writers festival, Words on the Waves, and I helped with their social media, and then I also went to the Moulin Rouge musical in Sydney, which was great, and also the first time I've ever been to a musical. So I did enjoy it as my first time experience at the theatre. Then we had some work events as well, like book launches and whatnot, so it's been a crazy busy month, and somehow I still managed to read 8 books. So just quickly before we get into those books, I thought I would mention the ones that I'm currently reading right now, which are The Iliad by Homer. I am back on my ancient history kick, as you can probably tell with this pick, which is Electra by Jennifer Saint. Retells the story of Electra, Cassandra, and Clytemnestra. Probably saying that wrong, but that's fine. So I am in the middle of both of those, both going well. I've been reading the Iliad on and off all year, little bits here and there, and I enjoy seeing how the new retellings draw from the source material. And then I'm also reading The Woman in the Library by Solari Gentile. This is going great. I am a little over halfway. I'm waiting for the big reveal, and I have heard that it is very good and that it is a great payoff. And then I've just started the audiobook of 10 Steps to Nanette by Hannah Gadsby, and this is going along good so far. I was listening to it as I did my food shop yesterday. It was great. I'm enjoying it. So, as for what I read in June, let me quickly break it down for you. First of all, I read my favourite book of the year so far, which I'm pretty happy about. I read 2 5-star books this month, and even though star ratings are entirely subjective to your own experience, I am just very happy that I got to read these 2 really standout books, and overall the rest of the reads for the month were pretty positive as well. 5 of the books that I read out of the 8 were audiobooks. 1 was an ARC, which is a physical copy but an early copy, and then the other 2 were just regular physical titles. I read a whole bunch of different genres again this month, which consisted of a fictional short story collection, historical fiction, crime, and like kind of gruesome crime as well in some spots, and an autobiography as well, which is new for me and which was one of my favorite books of the month. So very delighted about that fact. So let's kick things off with a trilogy of crime novels which I consumed via audiobook, and that were the ones by Fiona McIntosh. So we have Bye Bye Baby, Beautiful Death, and Mirror Man. And this is interesting because the first 2 novels in this crime, I said trilogy, but I think there's going to be more. So in her crime novels were actually written a fair while ago, meaning like I think mid-2000s-ish, and they definitely are set during that time period too, and I really enjoyed these. And then apparently Fiona McIntosh's fan base also really enjoyed following along these stories, and with the main detective guy who is called Jack Hawksworth and is very charismatic. Very so. He has a lot of female friends during these books. Anyway, apparently there were people that were asking the author what happened to him and were there more stories to tell, and she said yeah, actually there is, and then released Mirror Man last year, which is 2021, I'm fairly sure. So these just all became available recently over on Libby, which is the audiobook app that I use. All you need to do is have a library card and it's all for free. So I smashed through these 3 audiobooks, which were about, I want to say, in between 10 and 14 hours long each. I smashed through them in June and I thoroughly enjoyed them. When I said gruesome crime at the start in my genre selections, that is this. Without giving spoilers, in the first book, Bye Bye Baby, there is a serial killer who is cutting up people's faces and cutting their genitals off. So that got described a little bit. And then in the second one, there is someone going around taking people's faces off. Yep. And then in the third one, reenactment type stuff. So the crimes in these books were described in detail so just to be aware of that. But the novels themselves were very easy to binge, obviously, and I did enjoy them. My favourite out of these 3 crime novels by Fiona McIntosh so far would have to be the middle one, which was Beautiful Death. Next up, I read Bila Yaradungalang Delay by Anita Heiss. This is a historical fiction novel set in, I think it was the 1850s / maybe a little bit later, which follows our main character Geraldine, who is an Aboriginal woman who is indentured to a white family. So she's basically their housekeeper. They don't like to say slave, but she is only paid in rations, and it's a reflection of the time in Australia back then. Now the title is actually Wiradjuri for River of Dreams, and there is a river motive that goes throughout this novel, as well as being a physical river within the story as well. And this one I would summarize as a slice of life story about what it was like to be Aboriginal when the colonizers came over. I also listened to the audiobook version of this one, which I really enjoyed, and throughout you feel this tension building as Geraldine is forced to relocate with this white family and be taken away from her own family and her own community, and just the harrowing effects of that on her. It was tough to read at times because there was not a lot of happiness here and there, but Geraldine does find happiness throughout the novel in bits and pieces, and I'm very thankful that I have read this one. Anita Heiss's prose is just very flowing and easy to get into. And yeah, definitely a worthwhile historical fiction to pick up, set in Australia from a perspective that we don't really hear from because whiteness. There you go. Then I read my favourite book of the year so far, and that was Heiss by Geraldine Brooks. This is the advanced reader copy of it. I was lucky enough to get this one from work, so very grateful for that. But this is what the final cover looks like, at least for the UK cover, and this was phenomenal. I was reading this at the same time as Anita Heiss's novel, and it was very interesting to see the comparisons and the similarities between Australia in the 1850s and America in the 1850s, because Heiss is set over 3 different timelines. You have the 1850s, you have 1956 I think it was, and then 2019. So all of these story strands pull together and create a whole, and very powerful. I'm going to link my book review for this up above and down below for you, where I go more in depth into it, spoiler free of course. But all you need to know is that you should really read this book. Geraldine Brooks just is a master storyteller. She puts so much time into researching her novels fully before she undertakes them. At least that's how it reads anyway, because there were so many different professions in this book and they were all just executed like she had done those jobs before. It was amazing. I especially enjoyed the horsemanship in this book, having grown up with horses. That felt very authentic to my own experience, and wow, just amazing. So just quickly, in the 1850s timeline, we follow Jarrett, who is a black slave, and he is the groom of Lexington, who is a real life racehorse that was very famous in America, and it's the relationship between Jarrett and Lexington throughout this time, which then juxtaposes with the 2019 timeline, where we follow Theo, who was also a young black man doing a PhD in art studies, and he finds a discarded painting of a racehorse on the side of the road, and it turns out that there is a link between this timeline and that timeline. We also follow Jess in the 2019 timeline and her role in the Smithsonian Museum in America and as a scientist. And then in the 1950s timeline, there is also a art critic who had this painting at one point. So a lot going on in the best way. And out of all the Geraldine Brooks novels that I've read, this is my 4th one from her. This is my favorite. It tops Year of Wonders and it tops People of the Book, at least for me personally. So if you're a fan of hers, definitely go and pick this up. It's already getting so much hype in the indie bookstore scene and it really deserves it. So go and read it, please. Then a nice little quick one, we have Galatea by Madeline Miller. Yes, this book is tiny. Where's a normal size book? Compared to a small paperback, that's it. This also attributes why I'm picking this up again as well to read from, because this is inspired by the tale of Galatea, which I wasn't really familiar with. This originally was only published as like a short story in ebook form, but then because of the popularity of Madeline Miller, it got printed, which I'm very grateful to have, and I'm happy to have read it. And it's about the tale of a man who carves this woman, and then one of the goddesses breathes life into her and she becomes his wife. But it goes a lot deeper into all of that compared to the original tale, and you get from Galatea's point of view, which I did really enjoy. And the setting of this was also purposely done and kind of hazy as to when it is set, because it's not like Circe or Song of Achilles where it's very clearly ancient history set. And I think I enjoyed that change just for this short story. It just makes me more hyped for the next Madeline Miller book to come out, which I think is a Persephone retelling. Would love that whenever we can get it. The second to last book that I have to talk about is The Burnished Sun by Mirandi Riwoe. This was one of the book club picks for our in-store book club that happens every month. And this is the collection of fictional short stories. I did have a couple of favorites in this. I don't read a lot of anthologies or short story collections very often, so this was something new and different for me, which I did enjoy. It was a heavier read though, and it was worthwhile having another book going alongside of this so that I could read a short story, fully process it and sit with it, read something else, and then come back and do another one. Otherwise, I feel like there was a couple that I read back to back to back and they kind of blur and weren't as powerful unless I took a story, read it, consumed it, and then went away again. So my favorite short stories in this were Hazel, She is Ruby Wong, and The Fish Girl. And this is a compilation of short stories about migrant, second-gen kids and minorities. I also really liked the two short stories which kind of bookended either side of the book. So you have Anna the Javanese and The Fish Girl. They are short stories that Mirandi has written before and published elsewhere, and both of them take a real source of art and then look at the people not mentioned within it. So with Anna the Javanese, that is a real painting by Paul Gauguin. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he was a painter and it was created in 1893. There was nothing written about the woman that sat for this portrait, Anna, and it's interesting how this author then reimagined, or at least gave life to, this figure within this very well-known painting. A similar thing happens in the Fish Girl short story, which has at the start of each small chapter a little excerpt from the poem The Four Dutchmen by W. Somerset Maugham. And again, you only know in that work of literature The Four Dutchmen, but in this you have a young girl called Mina who is kind of the object of fascination for a few of the men within this story, and it's giving voice to that invisible person, which is something that I really respected that this did. So overall, the stories within this were heavy and I did feel melancholy at time, but that's because they are based off of, you know, the very real experiences of minority people. So again, a very worthwhile read, and to consume a short story, sit with it, actually take it in, and then come back later, best way to read this. And then finally, I read The Storyteller by Dave Grohl, or at least he read it to me via the audiobook, which was fantastic. He is a great narrator. I'm very glad that I consumed this book in this way because he just added so much personal warmth and familiarity to it. And this is just a book of all the different fun things that he's done through his life, different life experiences, which is umbrellaed by his moral and his motive of just being a humble person. And he seems like a great person. after reading his autobiography. Obviously, you're always going to be pitched in that light when you get to tell your own story, but it was amazing. Also, I think it speaks volumes as well that I'm not a big music buff and I still was able to really enjoy this autobiography. So I think this is one that could cross over for a whole bunch of different people, especially if you want to draw a positive mindset out of it, because that's what links all of his little tales together, is his outlook in life. And yeah, thoroughly enjoyable, very positive, very inspiring, and I'm very happy to have finally gotten around to consuming this one. So there you go, those are the 8 books that I read in the month of June for 2022. I'm very happy about this reading month, and it felt very strong, even though I had a lot of extracurricular activities going along at the same time. Some amazing standout books within this, not a bad one amongst them, and yeah, feeling very, very content with that effort. If you want to see more from me, I will link my social media handles down below, which is mainly just my Instagram page, where I do update my wrap-ups more frequently within my Instagram stories. So every month I do a what I've read story and a what I've watched story. So the month of June consisted of watching things like The Boys, Umbrella Academy, things like that. So if you'd like, you can follow the link down below or go search my handle and give me a follow. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for sticking around and for hanging out with me. Comment down below if you've read any of these or if there's any that you really want to get to. And I'll see you sometime soon. Bye!